when you hear the term ESG, what comes to mind? Anyone? Quiet. ESG, what was that? Sustainability, awesome. What else? ESG. Recycling, that's good. What else? What else do we think about when we hear the term ESG? There we go. What was that? Reporting, yes, that's a good one. Reporting. Any other pieces? ESG? Any of these terms start to ring a bell? Marketing comes in terms with reporting. We talked about recycling, activism, and environmental impact. Greenwashing. Is anyone, the greenwashing term, does that come to mind? Yep, making sure that we're doing what we're actually saying we're doing. But oftentimes, to be quite honest, I think the most common term is confused, right? You hear the word ESG, like what in the world is that? What is ESG? I mean, I get sustainability, I get recycling and reporting, but ESG, what does that mean? So ESG at its core is sustainability, which as an industry, we are all really familiar with. When you think about ESG, it's a way to talk about impact and how we as companies are impacting the environment, are impacting our workforce or other social elements, and are impacting the communities in which we operate. So all of these pieces start to come together to formulate this story around ESG, which again, it's sustainability. Everyone here is a sustainability practitioner in some way, shape, or form, so it doesn't feel quite so scary when we start to think about it from a sustainability lens. For our company, for 4840, you'll see under the environmental piece, I talk about wood waste management, but then the social aspects, health and safety, at the top of everyone's mind as we think about our workforces. Cybersecurity. There have been some really fantastic conversations here at Pack EXPO around cybersecurity. A governance conversation, another piece of ESG. All different layers that come together to create that story. When folks ask you about ESG, a topic that you can talk on. So, why is this important? Anyone? Talked about recycling, right? Why is recycling important? What does that do for us as a company? Why would we want to recycle? It makes us feel good, make some money off of it, right? What about reporting? Yep, go for it. Yeah, running out of landfill space, right? So we want to recycle. Why would we want to report this information? Someone mentioned reporting with ESG. Why would we want to share it? Government compliance, it's a great one. And our stakeholders are interested in that, right? Our consumers want to know. A lot of times our customers want to know. But really and truly the drivers behind that, and there's a lot of things that make us feel good when we think about ESG, but there is a lot of data out there that also starts to show that wrapping our heads around ESG or sustainability can increase efficiency and decrease turnover. What happens if you have fewer health and safety related incidences at a facility? You're reducing cost, right? What happens when you show your workforce that you care? They want to stay at your company longer, ultimately starting to decrease turnover in that space. Reducing costs overall, and then the reputational piece, of course. This is important for us. This is important for our company, and this is our company's brand and our value. So all of those pieces layer together to show that there is a perceived value in ESG. I love technology, right? Things not cooperating. Strong ESG performance viewed as value. And that's a big thing, right? We care a lot about value. There was a recent study that was produced by McKinsey talking about sustainability stocks and the influx of dollars that were going into those stocks. So let's rewind pre-pandemic. In 2018, about $5 billion was being put into sustainability-related stocks and investments. Give us 3 years later, just prior to the pandemic, any guesses on what that number looked like? $50 billion in 3 years, $50 billion rise. What do you think happened during the pandemic? Go down? Anyone? Guesses? Up, $70 billion in 2 years. This year alone, there's been over $100 billion of new money that's been put towards sustainability-related companies. It's a lot of perceived value, $100 billion. We're not even through with this reporting year. That's over the course of the past 3 quarters. So there is a ton of perceived value, not just for us as companies, but for those out there that are putting their dollars towards this investment. And this ties back to the comment around reporting. Why would we want to share that information? When people understand what we're doing and how that ties back to ESG, it's really easy for them to say, oh, I see the value there. That $100 billion, let me put some of that money towards that company. It's also being considered a license to operate. Some of you heard the term license to operate. Does that resonate? So for folks that may have spent some time in the oil and gas industry or the heavy refining industries, this concept of license to operate means how you as a company get to continue to go out into the community and have a good reputation, a really solid, valuable reputation. When we talk about license to operate, it means, what does that mean in the way that you're connecting? You'll see 2 big pieces in the middle here. The SEC, so in the US, regulations that are starting to drive. We talked about that regulatory reporting tie. Project Gigaton. Is anyone familiar with Project Gigaton? So this is a Walmart initiative, right? They are incentivizing their suppliers to reduce their carbon footprint. Really interesting with Project Gigaton. At Walmart, they maintain dashboards. They put up their suppliers. They're looking at who's performing better, and they're sharing that information. They're wanting to create this sense of, okay, buy-in, who can do better, who can be stronger, who can go faster at this. But that license to operate, we will come to a point very quickly where you'll see folks that won't want to work with someone that can't share that information around those ESG pieces that they're looking for. Carbon footprint happens to be one of them. You'll see a couple other pieces up here around supply chain diversity, pieces around disability equality. So other elements that come outside of that environmental story that we're really accustomed to that start to layer in and being important to investors and being important to your stakeholders. So what do we do about this, right? That's also the big question. What can we do? Are there folks here that have sustainability programs within their company? Raise show of hands. Yeah, we've got quite a few. We talk about sustainability, right? We start to think about what does that mean for our company? So we start with making a plan. Has anybody heard of SASB or GRI or some of these other sustainability or ESG types of metrics? Raise hands. Yes, yeah. So see, y'all are really knowledgeable when it comes to ESG. We make a plan and we think about what of those topics are important to our company, right? It doesn't have to be about the carbon footprint piece. It's most certainly important. But maybe health and safety is a critical driver for your team, right? So maybe you want to prioritize that. Maybe giving back to your community and your philanthropic practices are really, really important because a lot of your workforce comes from the community. So you want to show that connection. You make a plan as to how you want to think about that impact that you're having. The second piece, the reporting element, develop those metrics, right? A story becomes much more powerful when you have numbers that you can tie it to. Right? That piece creates a lot of challenges. There's lots of interesting ways to start to track metrics, but grabbing that data and packaging it in a way that you can share is really important for this next piece, which is the performance, right? We say health and safety is important to us. How do we show that? What does our baseline look like? Have we reduced it? Has it increased? What's driven that? Did our workforce grow so we had more numbers? Okay, well now we can explain that. Rather than someone coming and say, oh, your health and safety performance dipped. Okay, well we understand that. We're tracking it. We have the numbers to show and to share. And of course, the last piece, as I mentioned, sharing your story. No one can tell your sustainability story or your ESG story better than you. When you as a company take the opportunity to say, I see people are asking for this information. I see my customers are really valuing this information. I see investors are putting dollars towards company that can show this story. We are going to tell our own story. We're not going to let someone else drive our narrative. We're going to take the opportunity to put some time to do the work behind creating that plan, identifying those metrics that are important, tracking our performance, and then telling everyone what that means to us. And that's very different than sitting by and letting some other rating agency look at your company and say, oh, wow, you're doing so good or you're not doing so good. Or by letting another customer make assumptions about what you're doing. Telling your own story becomes very, very powerful. Which brings us to the meat of the piece, the top 3, right? So you'll see up here, when we talk about ESG, there are three pieces where we see industry in the US in particular, but most certainly globally, that folks are asking questions, emissions data, right? How many folks are tracking your carbon footprint for your company? Probably most of the folks that are here, right? How you do that becomes really important. Waste, I'm sure waste, we've had a ton of conversations around recycling, that's a big piece. And then social topics. And I want to lean on the social topics piece. There's been a 37% increase in the number of questions that are being brought to market by investors around the social space. So often when we think about ESG, we think about ESG from this perspective that means environment, right? We come to it with this lens of waste, recycling, carbon footprint, but there's a huge element in the social space. And social, like I said, means health and safety. Social means wellness. How do we take care of our workforce? How do we bring good wages to that market and keep and maintain those workforce throughout? The social elements are quickly on the rise and becoming an important part of the conversation. The governance piece, the G has always been there. I know we mentioned the regulatory drivers. It's a big piece of the conversation, but also really important as well, just not necessarily quite at the top of the register, particularly in the US, because we don't have the regulatory drivers yet. Any questions, any thoughts?